So at this point, you are probably a bit more aware of the parameter that's being passed into the main method. So you might have noticed that we have this string array that we call args. So at this point, you're probably aware of the fact that that is in fact a string array, now that we've seen a little bit about that. So this string array that we have, we call it args. That's going to be short for arguments. This tells us that the main method of a Java program is capable of accepting command line arguments. These command line arguments can either be specified in, say, like a terminal, a command prompt, maybe like Windows PowerShell, or it could be through an arguments list that is provided in the IDE that you're working in. So the example that I'm showing right here, we've set up our main method, and then we're going to go ahead and just do a for each loop where we get each one of the different args, so we call them just arg individually, from that args array, and we go ahead and print each one of those to the console. So if we wanted to, we could go ahead and take a quick look at this in NetBeans. So we'll come over here, go ahead and create a new project. For this new project, I'll go ahead and call this one command line arguments. Go ahead and finish that. And for this one, we'll go ahead and clean up the little bit of the code that we have right here. So get rid of the extra comments and adjust the style. And right here, we can go ahead and start putting in that for each loop. So we'll go ahead and say something like for string arg in args. So that's coming from this args right here. We're going to go ahead and say system.out.println the arg. Go ahead and save that. So naturally, of course, if we just put this together and we try to run this, we're not going to see anything happen. The reason for that is that we have not yet specified any command line arguments that we want to pass into this program. So in order to do that, we need to navigate to the appropriate tool inside of this NetBeans IDE. So one of the ways that we can get to it is we can go to Run. We're going to go to our Set Project Configuration, and we want to go ahead and customize this. So when we do that, it's going to open up this window right here. The thing that we're going to be interested in is going to be this little input text box right here next to this arguments. And we can go ahead and put in some arguments for this. So for this one, I'll just go ahead and do something very simple. Let's start with just the word hello. We go ahead and push OK. And so now, if we go ahead and run this program, it's going to take that hello that I just put, and it's going to use that as one of its command line arguments. So it's going to get put into this arg string, and then we can go ahead and actually print that to the console. So we go ahead and run this. We can see that hello printing to the console. And then additionally, if we want to add more to it, so we can come back over to Run, go to Set Project Configuration and Customize. So one of the things to keep in mind about this set of arguments is that each one of the individual arguments, so each individual arg, as we described it in our for each loop, those are going to be separated with a space. So if I did something like hello, and then a comma, and then a space, and then the word world, and an exclamation point, it's going to treat hello and the comma as one of those arguments, and then it's going to treat world and the exclamation point as another argument. So if I go ahead and push OK, and I run this, we're going to see two things getting printed to the console, each on its own separate line. So go ahead and do this. We're going to see hello and a comma on the first line, so that's going to be argument 0, since it's an array, it's 0 based. And then we're going to see world and the exclamation point, that's going to be argument 1. Additionally, we'll take a look at variable length argument lists. So some methods can take a variable length number of arguments, such as string.format or printf. So you've seen before when we were using the printf method that we had one argument that was the string we wanted to format, and then after that we had an argument list for the number of placeholders or the number of variables that we're going to replace our format specifiers. But the number of things we would have for that argument list, there was no set size for it. It could be as many as we wanted. The reason that we could do that is because of the fact that our method, this printf method, is making use out of a variable length number of arguments. So these parameters of variable length are going to be indicated using the following syntax in a method header. So right here we've got a method called sum. So it's going to be public static int sum So the return type is going to be int, meaning we want to get an int out of this. And then for the parameter, we specify the data type of the individual items. So if our sum is going to be an int, that means we're going to add a bunch of ints together. But the number of ints that we want to specify could be 1, 2, or more. So we're going to use this ... after the data type to indicate that it could be any number of arguments. So in this case, we're going to have an int ... and then the name of it, in this case, numbers. So let's go ahead and create another project, and let's put together this method right here with this variable length number of arguments. So go ahead and minimize this. So come over here, we'll go ahead and create another project. Again, going to be a Java application. We'll call this one var args, since var args is the shorthand for variable length arguments. Go ahead and click finish. And so right here, go ahead and remove the extra comments that we don't need. Clean up the style a little bit. Underneath the main method, we'll go ahead and put together our sum method really quick. So we're going to do public static, do int as the return type. We're going to call the method sum, and it's going to be variable length arguments. So we're going to do int ... and then our numbers. So that'll be the name of that variable or that parameter. The next thing I'm going to need is going to be an int that I call total, since this is going to hold the sum of all of the different items that I'm adding together. The next thing I'm going to include is going to be a for each loop. So I'm going to say for int number in my numbers, so inside of my variable length arguments. Oops. We'll go ahead and just take one of those numbers and add that to total. So we're going to use pretty much the same syntax that we saw before when we were adding all of the items together for, say, one of our one-dimensional arrays. We wanted to get one of the totals of it. So we're going to do total plus equals number, and then at the very end we can go ahead and return our total. We'll go ahead and save that. And so then if we come up here, we can go ahead and do a print statement, and we'll put in sum. So whatever we get back from sum, we're just going to print that to the console. So it's a system.out.println, and right here we're going to put sum. And let's start with just a single number. We'll just put 1. Go ahead and save that. We'll go ahead and run this. We just get the 1 printing to the console. But now what we can go ahead and do is add more items to this, or more arguments to our sum method. So let's put another one in, say 1 and 2. So make sure that this is a comma separated list. We'll go ahead and run this. And now it's going to do 1 plus 2 and give us the total of that as 3. And then if we put another one, so do like 1, 2, and 3, go ahead and save that and run it. And now we get 6. So now it's going to do 1 plus 2 plus 3. So no matter how many arguments I put into this, I could keep going forever pretty much. So maybe do all the way from 1 to 7 and run that. And it'll still give you some answer for it based on going through this for each loop and just adding all the numbers together. So the number of arguments that I put doesn't matter because of the syntax that I have right here. It's going to accept any number of arguments for that. So one of the things to note about precisely how this actually works, given the behavior of this method, specifically the part where you see that we created a for each loop where we're using numbers where we would typically expect to see an array, we can see that numbers, the parameter, or the var args parameter that we're using, is actually being converted into an array of the data type specified. So in this case, it's actually going to be treating it like an int array once it actually goes into the body of this method. All right, so at this point, that's going to wrap up everything for command line arguments and variable length argument lists. In the next video, we're going to start wrapping up on Chapter 7 content by going through the array list class.